Tell me, what exactly is the inner critic? How do we all develop one?
So, the inner critic is a persona that we develop usually before the age of 7. And it's usually derived by your family dynamic,
Mhm.
whether it's culturally, generationally, and it becomes the management mechanism in which you operate to protect yourself based on your environment. So, for me, my inner critic, I call her the sergeant. And I'm very militant. I'm very hyper focused. I can be very critical. And that was because my mom was in her very masculine energy. She was in the
Mhm.
military. She walked around with a 38 on her hip. I was born the day of a revolution. The country was completely torn after I was born. So there was a lot of scarcity, a lot of fear. We were part of the political regime that overtook the country. So I grew up with guards and very scarcity mindset.
Which country was this?
Nicaragua.
Hmm.
So in 1979, the revolution broke out, and my father fled the country, left my mother behind. She had to fend for herself. So I had to grow up very fast, really quickly. Migrated to the United States, lost everything. Obviously, you literally leave with the clothes on your back. We left our
Yeah.
home, we left cars, everything, and pretty much came into poverty in the United States. I had to grow up fast. I had to be very independent. My mom wasn't able to be nurturing and loving. I didn't get tucked in at night. It was more like, what do you need to do? And you have to get it done, which
Mhm.
in a way really served me well because moving into the United States, living in San Francisco, I was in the inner city. There was a lot of gangs. There was a tremendous amount of prostitution. I was walking home from school getting hit by pimps. I was jumped several times, so I learned how to fist fight very early on. So I really knew how to take care of myself. And I had a lot of influences around me that were very negative, where I could have been into drugs, I could have got pulled into prostitution. I didn't pick any of those things. And I really had this sense of integrity where I knew that what I was surrounded in wasn't for me. And the
Right.
moment that I started making different decisions, that's when my life changed. And I took the initiative to get myself out of the environment that I was in. And I did right out of high school. I literally graduated July of 1997, and I had one of the best jobs a 17-year-old could have in October of the same year. And I never looked back. Those were the foundations in which I started from. And I get stuck in the sergeant mode sometimes. And my daughter, my oldest, she's my greatest teacher. And she's like, Mom, you're doing it again.
Ah,
And I say, I apologize. Can we start over?
yeah.
So this work, it's a practice, and we lose ourselves because we do have triggers from the inner critic. It's not one for you to try to squash and you never eliminate. It's part of who you are. But if you name it and you know that it's there, you have control over it versus you showing up in the world, it controlling you. And
Right.
that is the deep work.
Yeah. And that's the power, right? That's the power. Are most of our inner critics like the sergeant or the school principal or the stern dad? Like, is that typically the archetype of the inner critic?
Or the victim.
Mhm.
My mom's inner critic is the victim. And
How
she,
so?
because everything is happening to her, she never really took responsibilities for her part and how her life turned out. There's always someone to blame. So she lives in this perpetual agony of her life doesn't belong to her. But she didn't have the tools that I had. She's from a different generation. She didn't deal with her pain. My father left her when she was pregnant. She was alone in this scary, scary country. Her mother died when I was 5 from cancer. The love of her life, that wasn't my dad actually, was murdered in the war. Her brother was murdered in the war. So there's so much trauma and pain that was passed down. She didn't deal with it, so she poured it into me. And that's why coaching showed up for me in my life. This feels so unbearable. I can't possibly do the same thing. There's
Yeah.
no way. And back then, I didn't necessarily think about being a parent, but I knew that if I ever wanted to have kids, Like I had to do something. And I literally went into coaching because I needed the tools to fix myself. And it turned out that through that process, there was nothing to fix. It was just me having to learn how I was going to lead my generation forward and not with the pain.
I love
So,
that.
so now I use my pain to help other people versus it dictating my life like it does for my mom.
Yeah, I'm really connected to the story as well because I feel like even with my corporate career, like the reason I took a sabbatical and went to California to learn from and go on this yoga and personal growth journey was to also understand what causes the burnout, what causes the disconnection, what causes that feeling of, okay, so I'm on track, like I'm doing all the quote unquote right things, but why is there still a disconnect? Or why do I still feel the need to overperform or to hyper do, right? To be hyper controlling about how the work gets done or to show up in a certain way that didn't necessarily serve me, but felt like what was required. So I think recognizing that there are certain scripts and quote unquote programs that are running the show in terms of how we behave reactively when we're not thinking about it versus when we are consciously aware of the behavior, consciously aware of potential impacts, and then choosing something different from, a value, a skill, a way of being that is more in alignment with how we want to be and how we want to experience the world is something that is so critical. And I think that's why I also do the work that I do, because I became to recognize that our emotional capacity and our emotional landscape is one of the most important aspect of self-development, growth, and really feeling the success that you create in the world, like appreciating that success, not just like being successful on paper, but feeling so unfulfilled, burnt out, tired, disconnected. Like that's not a way to live. When we
Right.
can tap into our emotional climate and recognize where the misalignment is, and again, that could be values work, that could be archetype work, that could be somatic work, that could be a lot of different tools that we have today, right? Your mom didn't have the tool, maybe my mom didn't have the tools, our parents don't have the tools, but these tools are now available, widely available, and we now have the experience of utilizing them and bringing them to the world. And that's why I think the quote unquote softer side of leadership is actually the most powerful work that can be done. So I'm so glad that you're doing this work. This conversation is so important.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for allowing me to do it with you.